everybody. Happy Friday. Norwich City, of course, back in action this Saturday at Carrow Road after last week's big East Anglian derby. And looking ahead to preview the trip, or I suppose to say the trip, the game against Huddersfield at Carrow Road on Saturday is my colleague Connor Southwell. Connor, first and foremost, I say a week on from that trip to Portman Road. Any sort of further reflections on that game and maybe the confidence and mood around the camp then heading into what's maybe a little bit more of a down-to-earth game against Huddersfield Town?
Yeah, good afternoon, Adam. Good afternoon, everyone. Season greetings, etc., etc. Beyond spending the last week just finding the whole thing quite funny. I think the reflection has to be that still underlying everything, strip away the result and the run and all of those various aspects. There's still a real need to see some improved performances, I think, and this festive run of games, really, which is 4 games in 10 days, which is excellent. A real feast of football over the festive period. But actually broaden it out beyond that, and 5 of the next 7 games for Norwich City are against teams that currently sit in the top 6. So it feels like a really decisive run. And if Norwich City are to navigate that run and ensure they maintain this really positive run of form that they've built up over the last seven games or so, then it will have to involve beating some of the better teams in the division. And the way you do that is by improving your performance levels and showing that you're capable of much more than perhaps what we've seen recently, because we can all hide it and we can all enjoy the result now the final whistle is gone. But Norwich City could being the word. They could have been behind by a number of goals by half time last weekend. So there is still a need for me to see the quality of that performance level improve and increase if they're to have any hope. And actually, it feels like a run which may well decide whether this season is going to be a top 6 push or whether we're going to have to settle for Norwich City being mid-table fodder. So it's a big few weeks, and it all starts here against Huddersfield on Saturday, which, as David Varner said yesterday, should be an opportunity to get out of the blocks for a win and make sure the mood and the feeling heading into this run of fixtures is incredibly positive.
One positive is, of course, the injury update we got yesterday from David Varner at his press conference. Lots of players returning, sort of a lot of them need to maybe build up fitness before they'll be involved, but certainly sort of moving forwards into kind of the new year, they're all going to hopefully be available. Janulis back for Saturday's game, Jakob Sorensen back in training, Grant Hanley back in training, Ben Gibson back in training, Wang back in training. Of course, the Josh Sargent being back on Monday, which I'm sure many Norwich fans are that's the best Christmas present they could have asked for. Just how big a boost is that, Connor, for sort of won the competition, I suppose, in the squad and maybe motivating players to kick on and sort of, increase their performance levels to stay in the team, but also just for like the fans as well, buying into kind of these festive fixtures, maybe sort of gives that a little bit more of a mood booster, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's huge, because I think we've seen where in some areas the squad has really struggled when players have dropped out, and we could have a broader discussion about the depth of the squad and what that suggests and what it tells us. But I think all it does really, and I spoke about the run of games that's coming up, there's no excuses now for Norwich City, for David Varner. If they can't improve those performance levels, if they can't continue this good run of form, and they can't produce a consistent level of either results or performance over the run of games that's to come, then there's not really now an excuse to scramble for, really, because you've got players who are returning back to the squad who should be able to make a key difference. The focus, obviously, inevitably is going to be on Josh Sargent, but even Hwang coming back, he adds a different option to the striking areas to Ida and Barnes. Ben Gibson, does that allow Kenny McLean to move from that left-sided defensive position into midfield, which in turn would lead Gabriel Sara to play in perhaps a bit more of an advanced position? So all of these things have knock-on effects that should, as a whole, improve the starting 11 and improve the squad more broadly as well. Grant Hanley coming back, I think we're all maybe a little bit intrigued to see what condition he returns back in, and the hope is that he can replicate some of the performance levels that he showed pre-injury, because there's certainly at this level a very, very good defender in there, and that competition for the right-sided centre-back now is really hotting up as well. So, yeah, undoubtedly a massive boost ahead of a really busy, congested period of the season, where we're going to learn a lot more about this Norwich City side and learn whether this recent form has been papering over the cracks in terms of performances, or whether this can be actually the foundation that starts a really good run of results. So, yeah, it's a massive boost. I think I'm curious, because particularly around the Josh Sargent element, there's been a lot of focus and emphasis put on his return, and understandably so, and because of the nature in which he started the season. And It was actually in this reverse fixture, wasn't it? He picked up that injury. I'm curious to see if those levels can be found again, and whether he can show that he can be that goal scoring number 9 that we saw. Because actually, you look at his career, and actually that's probably been the exception rather than the norm. And the big thing, and I think I've communicated this to you and to my other colleagues at various points, is the question, well, what if that was just a really good patch of form for Josh Sargent? What if he comes back and he's the player who scored 2 goals in however many games at the end of last season? So I think that, as always, there is a nature of players getting better when they don't actually play. And the sample size was certainly too small to see whether Sargent can have that significant impact. But look, it's a massive boost just for the mood, just for the feeling. And hopefully as well, that has a knock on to the performance levels, because that for me is the key here. Yes, they've survived a run of 7 games. They've done that not played particularly well. And oh dear, my dog's just come in and he's going to avalanche this broadcast. So yeah, I think it's a really interesting period. I'm just going to have to remove him, Adam. So you're going to have to talk for momentarily. He shouldn't be upstairs, by the way. So no idea how he's managed to do that.
There we go. These things happen when you're live. Nikki asking about starting 11s for tomorrow. Of course, we're speaking about the sort of injury update we're getting. I think left back is going to be the position I'm going to talk about with Connor shortly when he returns. Nicky's actually put his starting 11 in here. Here's his gun: Stacey, Duffy, McLean, Unulis, Sarah, Nunez, Signs, Rowe, Barnes, Ida. Shaney, NCFC is Sargent back on Monday. Yes, we got the update yesterday. Of course, on Josh Sargent back in training on Christmas Day for Norwich City. Obviously, there'll be an element of building up fitness, but certainly to be an option even off the bench heading into kind of the new year, then where he might be sort of more available for the starting 11 would be a huge boost. Connor, there we go. Left back's kind of, I suppose, the point I wanted to move on to. Dimi Unulis back. Sam McCallum, of course, got thrown in last weekend at Portman Road. I thought maybe struggled a little bit in the first half, but I thought second half he was pretty much excellent, to be honest. Everything that kind of went down that side, he was clear and he was sorting out. How do you think David Wagner's going to go with this tomorrow? I mean, Unulis had been in pretty decent form, I'd say, and quite crucial to what he's trying to do in terms of playing out. So how do you see him kind of adapting to that tomorrow? Which player do you think might get the nod?
Yeah, really interesting one. I can kind of see arguments on both sides. I think it would be, as you mapped out there, probably quite harsh to drop Sam McCallum after his second half performance and just how well he did at solidifying what looked like quite a shaky left side in the first half at Portman Road. So it would feel quite harsh to drop him out. But by the same token, the type of game that I anticipate it will be, where Norwich are faced with a low block and having to break that down, I think you would probably maybe bank on Dimi Unulis, particularly if it is Borja Sainz playing on that side, because I think he gives you a bit more attacking presence and also threat in the attacking areas compared to Sam McCallum. And if it's going to be a game where Norwich are going to have a lot of the ball and they are going to be able to, Huddersfield are going to look to frustrate them, I think that gives you an outlet on the left. Not that Sam McCallum doesn't do that. And I think we saw how good he is at whipping the ball into the box for the build up to that John Rowe goal. But if he can get Unulis in those more advanced positions, I think you would probably back him more so to have a better impact in terms of end product than Sam McCallum. So I think purely based on the type of game it is, I think if Dimi Unulis is 100%, he'll go back there. But not to sit on the fence, but it would not surprise me if he rewards Sam McCallum with what was an excellent second half display. But like you said, there were still some of those defensive vulnerabilities that we saw in the first half against Ipswich on display. So curious one, but I think the type of game and the type of threat that maybe they'll need on that left hand side, that probably feels like it suits Dimi Unulis more than Sam McCallum for me.
One player who's probably a shoehorn for a start tomorrow, Borja Sainz, finally managed to get himself in the 11 in recent games. Of course, the goal and assist against Sheffield Wednesday, a relatively good performance as well against Ipswich. I felt at points sort of certainly trying to sort of bring an attacking edge to a side that was maybe sort of having to sit back and defend a lot of the points in, particularly the first half. How impressed have you been, Conor, with him? I mean, there's kind of been this sort of, I suppose, clamour for him to start games for quite a long time. David Wagner's opted for Fashnak or Ono Hernandez at points. Fans maybe a little bit frustrated and couldn't understand why he hadn't been given an opportunity sooner. Is it almost a little bit of a surprise we haven't seen him sooner based on what we've seen in recent games?
Yeah, I think it probably is. I think what we've seen over the last month really is a player that's ready from various cameos and the impact that he's had. I think it all stems back from that League Cup appearance at Fulham, doesn't it? When he came on, I think we were all sort of sat back in our chair thinking, "Woof, what a player this lad looks intense, energetic, can carry the ball." And like you say, in those moments when Norwich City had to get up the pitch, actually the 2 or 3 times that they did that, and actually the moment that they got up the pitch leading to the long throw that John Rowe scored, that was Borja Sainz bursting up the pitch and carrying the ball forward. He's a different type of winger, I think, to what they have. A bit more creative, a bit more technical, someone who can unpick a lock, which, we maybe look at the Sheffield Wednesday game, the importance that had on that game, scoring at that moment, didn't allow Sheffield Wednesday to settle, but actually was a Norwich player taking a ball in a tight space, turning and unleashing a brilliant shot into the top corner. We've just not seen that from Norwich City's attacking play. It's been a little bit more one-dimensional than that. It's been a lot kind of focused in getting into wide areas and crossing the ball in. Very few. I think there's 2 Championship sides who average more crosses per game than Norwich City. So I think Borja Sainz does give you a different type of quality and a different type of threat for teams to think about, and particularly in these type of games at Carrow Road, where you expect an opponent to come and deploy quite a low block and to sit quite deep and to frustrate Norwich. He's the type of player with the quality who, because he can threaten from range, but also can pick a pass. I think it's a game that feels like it's quite tailor-made for him if they can get him on the ball and get him on the ball consistently enough. So yeah, I think maybe kind of the supporters, in a sense, have been justified, kind of justified with what they've seen by calling for him to start more than he has done, because the qualities that he's shown, admittedly, probably more flashes at Portman Road because of how camped in Norwich were and how much emphasis there was on the defensive aspects of that game. But he's a player who has a real good set of qualities, and if Norwich can get them out and sort of eke them out consistently in the Championship, then there's a player there who feels like he's going to produce, and he's kind of a kind of edge of seat player, which there's very few Norwich players who have that kind of feeling. So I think over this festive period, it's about giving him a run of games and actually being brave enough when you go to West Brom, when you go to Leeds, be brave enough as a coach to let Borja Sainz play, to maybe accept that there's going to be some risk that comes with that. He's not so good going the other way, but actually for Norwich, it probably isn't about that, because defensively they're not great. So you have to go and affect things from an attacking perspective, and I think he's a player who can really do that. So I've been really impressed with his opening 2 starts, and even that is kind of a testament to his performance levels, because he's not started the game since the end of last season in Turkey. So you would expect there's a few more gears to find in terms of his performances, and I think that's a really exciting prospect for Norwich City. And actually, of their summer recruitment, 22, signed on a free transfer from Turkey, Spanish winger. He's kind of a throwback really to maybe the successful eras of their recruitment. So yeah, I think everyone's kind of rooting for him, and hopefully Carrow Road can prove to be his playground again tomorrow, and it's another really good performance from him, because, as I said, the qualities are all there, and I think there's a bit of a hype around him at this moment in time, and he'll do well to keep that up.
Yeah, he sort of got a little bit of a sort of fiery side to him. You could see it at Portman Road, sort of winding up the home fans. Certainly a player that's I think Norwich fans are going to grow to love. You spoke about kind of the impact he could have on tomorrow's game. Huddersfield, of course, struggling a little bit at the bottom of the Championship, just 2 points above the drop zone. We went, of course, to John Smith's back in August. It was Neil Warnock in the dugout, a 4-0 Norwich City win that day. Since changed manager, it's now Darren Moore, who's, of course, experienced in English football, managed at Sheffield Wednesday, Doncaster, West Brom, lots of different teams. He's kind of a very experienced coach, but they're struggling a bit. I think it's 5 draws in the last 8. They're kind of draw specialists almost in the Championship, but just 1 win in the last 10. So it's been a little bit difficult. What have you made of it, Connor, since that change? Do you think that was maybe the right move for Huddersfield, or maybe sort of less so in the way that their form's kind of dropped off a bit?
Yeah, I think it probably was inevitable, really. I think one of a podcast that I listen to that's a bit more EFL wide. It's just really good for kind of keeping in touch with all of the clubs. Compared Neil Warnock to Ben Stokes, the England cricket captain, in that when there's a target and he has to go and swing his bat and hit a load of sixes, that's kind of what he's made to do. And keeping Huddersfield Town up last year from the predicament that he inherited them in was staggering, really, and kind of encapsulates why he is who he is and why clubs get him to do what he does. But when there's perhaps not that total and it's a bit more of a free hit, maybe he's not quite the same, but Stokes isn't quite the same cricketer. Maybe Warnock's not quite the same manager now. So Yeah, I think a change was probably inevitable. I would suggest it felt like it had maybe come to the end. I mean, even when we went, Neil Warnock was kind of firing shots upwards and speaking about budgets and transfers that hadn't happened, and maybe the squad quality. So yeah, look, I think statistically over the last significant period of time, really, probably since the changes in manager at QPR and at Sheffield Wednesday, Huddersfield have statistically, and their underlying numbers suggest they are one of the worst teams in the division, along with Rotherham, I would suggest. So I think they're probably a team that, barring some really aggressive recruitment in January, which again I would expect with their owner, and I think he said publicly just as much. Barring some really clever, astute signings, I think they're probably one that is going to drop out of the Championship this time around, providing Sheffield Wednesday under Danny Rowe and QPR under Marty Cifuentes. And we've seen close hand both of those clubs come to Carrow Road and look probably much better than, say, Preston did when they came to Carrow Road and are sitting in a different position. So I wouldn't let the league table fool you, is what I would say. And actually, for all those draws that they've amassed, they've lost fewer games, one game fewer than Norwich City this season. They've lost 8 and Norwich have lost 9. So that's quite a remarkable thing to think of. This isn't a team struggling in the same sense. They're probably doing really well at converting defeats into draws. It's now about can they convert draws into wins. He's changed them to play at a 3 at the back. It's a slightly different system to what Neil Warnock was asking them to play. And I think there's maybe a lack of quality in that squad. I don't think their attacking play has been that effective so far, and he's made them quite solid and difficult to beat. So that all of that kind of lends in maybe to the type of game that we saw against Sheffield Wednesday to an extent, maybe more so Preston, I think is what I would compare it to. They're going to come to Carrow Road. They're going to look to be really solid and look to make the most of those transitional opportunities, I suspect. So it presents a different challenge, I think, in that regard. And actually, you look this season, Norwich have struggled to break down teams with low blocks. Preston's a really good example, but even QPR was maybe a slightly different game. But there are other examples as well where they haven't quite. Leicester in the second half is one that stands out as well, where they just got picked off on the counter-attack admittedly. I respect the quality difference is there for all to see in terms of that. But there's no reason for me that Norwich City shouldn't be targeting 3 points here. And if they do, and they can extend that to 1 defeat in 8 games, and they can move closer to those top 6 places, then as Wagner says, it creates a real bounce into what is an incredibly tough festive period, all told. So I'm hopeful, and I think the key is to grab that early goal, and I think it's probably less so the first goal and maybe more the second goal that's going to be the vital one, because if that's Norwich taking a 2-goal lead, then that you would expect on recent results and certainly their attacking output, that to be enough to beat Huddersfield. If it's a Huddersfield equaliser, then the evidence is that they can make it a real slog and a real battle. So it's probably going to require a different type of test and a different type of challenge to the one at Portman Road last weekend. But if Norwich can come out victorious by hook or by crook, then hopefully, I will add, hopefully with a real performance behind them as well, then I think that will give everyone perhaps a little bit more confidence and just ease this kind of weird feeling that's been around Carrow Road now for a prolonged period of time.
Yeah, former Huddersfield manager, of course, David Wagner. Feels like maybe kind of there's been a little bit more of a shift in kind of fan feeling towards him in recent weeks, just 1 defeat in the last 7 games. What have you made of that situation, Conor? It does feel like maybe the kind of fans have maybe bought back into him a little bit, not saying for the long term, but sort of certainly for the short-term picture. The performances still haven't really been great, but the results have been there. This festive period maybe feels quite big for him as well. If Norwich can kind of kick on a little bit, get the results they need, then the top 6 maybe doesn't look a million miles away. But by the contrast of that, if they don't have a great festive period, they could be sort of quite I suppose the gap to bridge it back to the top 6 could be too big. So how do you maybe feel the fans are feeling towards David Wagner at the moment and his situation?
Yeah, I think it's probably it's quieter, sorry, than it was a few games ago, inevitably because of the stabilisation of their results, and that therefore is inevitable that the noise around the manager, who had won 1 in 10 prior to that point, was always going to calm down a little bit. So look, the sense that I get and the people that I speak to, and I don't speak to everyone, so I'm not saying this is the view, but I think there is maybe a bit of wait and see at the moment. It feels like a holding pattern around him. Like we say, so much hinges on, for me, the next 7 games. If Norwich can replicate this run of let's say 1 defeat in 7, that would be immensely impressive and would undoubtedly put them, if not in the top 6, certainly in around the top 6. So that's the challenge. And I think if they do that with players returning, then maybe people will be willing maybe to feel this is a corner that's been turned. I think the thing with Varner is, and I think this has always existed, even through the times where it was difficult, when many managers, and let's be frank, we saw Dean Smith hounded out for a lot less than that run and those level of performances in the autumn than what Varner produced and his team produced. A lot of that is about how well he communicates and how well he comes across and how well he's kind of dealt with that pressure. And I think there is this willingness from everybody for him to do well, because there is that likability there that he possesses. By the same token, I would agree with your summation there. The performances haven't quite been good enough, and there's been an element of, you look at some of the teams that they've played, the 2 wins at Carrow Road, QPR and Sheffield Wednesday, 2 teams who, yes, as I mentioned in the last answer, have improved significantly under their managers, have also really struggled to take points this season. They both currently sit in the relegation zone. Bristol City, who are in a degree of transition with Liam Mann.
We think we might have lost Conor there. We'll try and get him back as soon as possible. We'll play the clip that I'm going to ask him about shortly, just about Johnny Rowe and kind of the contract situation. And hopefully Conor will be back by the time we get around to talk to it.
Yeah, listen, obviously he has done great so far, but it's only half of the season. Hopefully, fingers crossed, he does exactly the same the second part of the season. The truth is, Ben is in conversations with his parties. The truth is as well, he is happy with his contract. We are happy with his performance, and we agreed, because he has 2.5 years left and we are in total control, we agreed to sit together at the end of the season. Let's try to perform the second part of the season like the first part of the season. Let's be only focused on this. Then everyone will be very, very happy at the end of the season, and then it makes sense to speak about anything else. What means contracts? I think anything else is not the right thing to do, because Johnny should do what he has done so far, be focused on the pitch and on his performances, and we try everything to support him as best as we can. And this is what I said after the Ipswich game, that he consistently can do what he has done so far. And yes, he scored a lot of goals. Yes, he is very young, but at the end of the day, and this is very, very good, he's very clever in his head. He knows exactly that some of the recent performances were not on his level. He is better than what he has shown, and this is what we have to make sure, that he performs consistently on his highest level, because he is a player who can be very, very important without ball possession as well, because he is football intelligent, and obviously in ball possession with his attacking threats, he is always dangerous for goals. And we have to make sure that Johnny stays healthy and that he can perform on this very high level consistently, and then goals for him will come, because he's a natural goal scorer and quite calm in front of the goal.
There we go. We've got Conor back. Conor, do you want to just finish off where you were, and then we'll move on to kind of the comments there from David Varner around Johnny Rowe?
Yeah, sorry, my web browser decided that was the moment it was going to shut down and refresh itself and update itself. So apologies, but I am back. Yeah, I think the point I was making is, of the wins, 2 have come against teams in the relegation zone in Sheffield Wednesday and QPR. They've also played Liam Manning's Bristol City, who I think will get better, but there is a degree of variance, I think, around that. And if we're all honest, again, that probably could have ended as a point. Likewise, QPR, and then Cardiff as well, which is maybe the 4th win of the 7 games, where they again really patchy, but it was a much improved second half, and actually probably deserved winners in the end. But they made hard work of it, and it was ultimately 2 goals in about 5 minutes that spun that game. So they've been operating on really fine margins, and the way I've been describing it at the moment is a Norwich team that's been producing moments, not a Norwich team that's been producing performances. Now, obviously, perhaps as we saw earlier on in the season, those moments are really difficult to sustain in the long term. You need to back them up with performances, and the hope is obviously that those moments provide the confidence which bring the performances. If not, then I think sadly that the reality is we're going to find ourselves, and Norwich are going to find themselves speaking about a really difficult run again, and this is kind of maybe where we're in the cycle. And if we get to the end of the next 7 games and Norwich have been comprehensively beaten by those teams that are currently in the top 6, with some who are maybe on the margins of that to come, and I think the points difference at that stage, coupled with the feeling, coupled with how they've performed against those teams, will probably make the perception and the reality of what they can achieve this season feel much different. So that is why, as Shane says in the comments, it's a crucial period now for Norwich City's season. Are they genuine top 6 challengers, or are they mid-table fodder? And I think actually in the next month or so, we'll have the answer to that question broadly.
Yeah, you mentioned about the communication and David Varner. I felt that was probably yesterday in his press conference the first time he's been quite open around kind of transfer windows. He tends to be a man who sort of shies away from questions around kind of windows and what sort of players they're interested in. But yesterday, he sort of padded through the question about the squad size to him. He sort of referenced that there's a few loan bids already on the table for players in the Norwich City squad. And more pertinently, the Johnny Rowe line, which obviously we just played the clip there, Connor. 11 goals already this season in all competitions, 10 in the Championship for a man who's mainly, I suppose, breakthrough season. It's almost been in the sense he just had those appearances off the bench in the Premier League, didn't really kind of make the mark. This season's been his opportunity. Made an England under-21 debut and scored. How big is that boost for Norwich City fans to hear those comments from David Varner that, they are aware of the situation? He's got 2.5 years on the contract. They're quite relaxed. Leave it till the summer and just let him enjoy his football.
Yeah, and as I understand it, there are talks that have been going on for quite some time now about potentially extending his deal, and last I heard, which was a couple of weeks ago, was still that the both of the parties were quite a way away from each other. So I think actually this decision to pause it and come back to it maybe is the best thing, because ultimately it will be dictated by what John Rowe does now, right? Because if he goes and nets another 11 goals and he nets over 20 in the Championship, which we're not even halfway, tomorrow is the halfway point of the campaign. If that is the case, and Norwich are looking at a player who scores over 20 goals at this level, they're looking at a big fee in the summer for me, regardless of contract or no contract. It becomes an irrelevance at that point. And to be honest, it might do anyway. But if this second half of the season maybe follows what we've seen in just the last 2 or 3 games, and I know you referenced it earlier, and David Varner has spoken about it as well. I didn't think he was that great against Sheffield Wednesday. He certainly wasn't very good at Bristol City, and he wasn't that great at Ipswich, really. There was one moment in particular, I don't know if it led to the Broadhead chance, but it definitely led to a chance where he gave the ball away on halfway and Ipswich then sprung and should have scored. So I don't think those kind of overall performances have been there in terms of comparatively to the start of the season. You actually look at the numbers as well, and whether you're into expected goals or not, he is massively overperforming his expected goals rate. Now, usually the science of this is that it catches up and tends to level out. But it could just show that he's very, very clinical. But I think, again, the sample size is maybe a little bit too small. So for me, all of those things probably point towards clubs wanting to take a longer look and a bigger assessment period of him, particularly if they're going to have to commit, as I suspect it will be, north of 20 million next summer to buy him. He'll be 21 at that point. If he's 21 in the England under-21s with 20 Championship goals on his CV, you can forget him playing for Norwich City. That just won't be a reality. So there is inevitability. I think for me, there was half a thought in my mind, and I think you could construct. I'm not saying this is the right argument to make before anyone jumps on me, but and I wrote about this yesterday. There is an argument that you could construct where you could say, well, Norwich need to bring the average age of the squad down. They need to add players. There is an argument to say, well, why not take a bid for John Rowe now, knowing that as you would for, I guess, the Max Aaron situation is comparable, maybe even the Anjon Bamadelli one, knowing that maybe this is him at the peak of his powers. You're not going to get a bigger bid than you get now. Ultimately, it comes down to belief. How much belief do Norwich City have that John Rowe is going to get better and is going to continue this run of form that he's been on? And I think David Wagner's comments show that they do believe that. And if that's the case, then you hold it out and you wait. And also, I think there's a messaging point of that. If you did let him go in January, even for a mega bid, what does that say to supporters who are going to be looking to renew their season tickets? Let's be honest, this is a factor in that. And also, it's very difficult to message, yep, we're going to go and compete for the top 6. Oh, but you've just sold your best player for 20 odd million. So that doesn't really match up. Either your fans thinking that or your squad of players thinking that. So I think it would have been too difficult for Norwich City to sell in January. It's a very difficult market anyway. Kicking the can down to the road, I think, gives him, hopefully, the security where he won't let this noise around his future affect what he's doing on the pitch. And that clarity hopefully helps everybody in terms of that January speculation, because there's going to be plenty of it, I think.
Yeah, there's a comment already around January. Ollie Frost on YouTube saying, who would you sign in the transfer window in January? Maybe less so who, Connor, but what kind of positions and what sort of, I suppose, targets do you think Norwich could be sort of drawing up? I mean, it feels like obviously Ben Napper's made it quite vocal in public spaces that they want to try and bring down the age profile of the squad. Of course, that's going to be difficult because a lot of these sort of older players are on longer term contracts. They kind of have to have someone come and want these players, or their contracts have to be up for them to be able to be moved on. So how do you think they target and I suppose approach this January window?
Yeah, I think January will be more about trimming than adding, if I'm completely honest. And I think there will be some movements kind of in and around the squad. I'm not sure I see anything major on any front, to be honest. I think Norwich could. The one position I think is, well, two positions actually I think are worth keeping an eye on. Central midfield. I think it's an imperative really that Norwich add in that area of the pitch, particularly if we get to January and Kenny McLean is still operating as a left-sided centre-back, and he's done a wonderful job at that so far. But if Ben Gibson returns and Grant Hanley returns and we're still seeing Kenny McLean there, then I think Norwich are going to need a midfielder to fill that void and to perhaps be a little bit more protective. That in turn then would obviously free Gabriel Sara up to go and do what he should do, which is affect stuff at the top end of the pitch and use his creativity and goal scoring threat in those type of things. So that's one area that kind of, whether you want to call it a holding midfielder, number 6, or maybe that kind of more protective layer, that is a key compartment, I think. The other one I would look at is the left back situation, because you've got Dimi Yanulis. We spoke about this earlier, but Dimi Yanulis and Sam McCallum, both of their contracts run out at the end of the season. From what we're led to believe, that there's certainly not going to be any talks on Yanulis' future this side of the year. So technically, both of them go into January knowing that they could start conversations with clubs overseas about potential pre-contractual agreements and whatnot. And there's always that possibility. And who knows? Because of that contractual situation, and if those talks do happen, Norwich may have to accelerate a sale to get some money for Dimi Yanulis. So I guess is probably the main case. So they could then be forced into the market for a left back, and that is a possibility that I could see coming down the track as well. I think they're pretty well stocked in central defensive areas until the end of the season, when you've got Bart and Gibson out of contract, and I think both of those would allow you to freshen up and make the squad a little bit younger in that area of the pitch. Those kind of areas as well, being as stocked as they are with the players coming back that they are, I would probably anticipate Jaden Warner heading out on loan. I think there's a couple of very live options for him at this moment in time that they're weighing over. So yeah, I think that's kind of what I see, more trimming than adding. But I think that midfield area for me is the priority. They need to get an addition in to support Gabriel Sara. Marcelino Nunez, who I think we'd all agree has done a really good job in the last few games. But I think there has still, Sheffield Wednesday in particular, that there was some vulnerability there, and actually against Ipswich there was Marcelo Bielsa then against Ipswich there was a bit of an openness as well. So I think there's a need to plug a gap there, and that for me is the priority. But whether that's a loan, whether that's a permanent, we'll see. But that's kind of how I see it going at this moment in time. Of course, one injury, as we saw in the summer with Josh Sargent, one injury, one suspension, one moment can change everything in that regard. So yeah, but as we sit here a week out from a week or so, 10 days out from the window, yeah, it's kind of how I see it transpiring.
Yeah, we'll be live for another 5 or 10 minutes. So any last sort of questions, comments, score predictions, whatever it is, get them down in the comment section below. Colin, just moving back to the football, we've already spoken quite a lot on this podcast or this preview show about kind of the upcoming festive fixtures, 4 really big games sort of this side of, well, I think Southampton is obviously on New Year's Day, but this festive bunch of games, Huddersfield at home, West Brom away, Millwall away, Southampton at home. If you're David Wagner and you're Norwich City, what's the points target really for these games? And sort of moving forwards, how many points do you feel they have to get?
That's a great question. I'm going to show my working first. So I think what you have to split these 4 games up. I know I've been talking about sort of 5 of the next 7 being against the top 6. Huddersfield, who are where they are in the table, Norwich City have to win that game for me. And if you were to have had the positive feeling that you had at Portman Road last weekend, even when the performance wasn't great, if you can then go and win this game, I think it bounces you into those next 3. So beat Huddersfield for me is a necessity. Millwall away, which is always difficult, and it's so difficult for Norwich and any team to go there and win. But Norwich do have a pretty good record there. I think if you could win those 2 games, I think it doesn't half take pressure off the West Brom and Southampton ones. And then anything, if you could get a draw at the Hawthorns and make that 7 points over 3 games, then I think that would be excellent. Southampton, I think, is just going to be a bridge too far in terms of the quality that they have and the way Russell Martin has got them playing. And we saw his Swansea team just how dangerous that can be. And I think they're maybe everything that Norwich City will dislike to play against. So that one I can see being tough. So I'm kind of working on the basis that 6 is par, I think, out of 4. And then I think anything above that, if you could get 9 from 12, I think that would be a superb return for Norwich City. So that is my favorite. It'd be interesting to get the thoughts of the people watching on kind of what they feel is par and what they feel is subpar or over par. But yeah, that's what about you, Adam? What are you thinking? I kind of feel like if you, in many ways, I don't want to say they're bankers because they're not bankers, but that should be where the expectation is to win. If you can then beat a West Brom, I think you then begin maybe to make your case as a top 6 contender. So this is where it's a little bit difficult for me.
Yeah, I think if you kind of go by the messaging of some of those sort of in the hierarchy at the football club, playoffs are still the aim this season. Zoe Webber sort of said that in one of a recent columns to me. If that's the case, they've got to be getting somewhere between 7 to 9 points from those 4 festive games. If that's the aspirations, I think anything less than that, then it becomes kind of a more difficult task because there's so many games in this period, and you see it kind of in the second half of the season in the Championship. You tend to get teams that pull away from those below, and it kind of becomes almost too difficult to bridge that gap, especially when teams get momentum. That's kind of key, isn't it? In the second half of the season, it tends to be the momentum team that gets into the playoffs is often the one that gets promoted. So it's all there for Norwich. It's an opportunity. Lots of players are coming back as well. Everyone's kind of put the emphasis on Josh Sargent. If we can get the Josh Sargent that was scoring goals at the start of the season, then I don't see any reason why Norwich can't really kick on. But this does feel like a pretty big period for the Canaries. Shaney NCFC with a question. Just to confirm, is Varner on a 12-month rolling contract, or am I wrong? We have mentioned that, I think, on previous ones, Conor, but do you just want to quickly map out the situation there?
Yeah, so as I understand it, he is contracted to a year. So every day that he is in post as Norwich head coach, his contract expires a year to that date. So, for example, today his contract expires the 22nd of the 12th, 2024. That's kind of the way that I anticipate it working, in a very similar way to the one that Stuart Webber's contract did. I think they're very similar structured in that regard. So, yeah, still a 12-month rolling contract.
Yeah, before we get your thoughts and comments on the game, just a yes or no answer from Ollie Frost. Can Norwich make it into the top 6, Conor?
No.
There we go. Connor's a little bit more pessimistic. I think it's possible, but my feelings probably also had to be no as well.
Possible, but not probable is what is my line at the moment.
Yeah, I probably agree with that assessment. And now moving back on to tomorrow's game, Conor, I'm intrigued to get your thoughts and feelings, and of course a score prediction. It feels like we've mentioned it a few times. This kind of feels like a must-win game, particularly then bouncing into what's a few more difficult games then over that festive period.
Yeah, I think it is like we say, because this sets it. We've kind of spoken about points totals there. If you get 1 from this game, then to go and get another 5 over the next 3 games, it feels really difficult. If you get 3, then I think it doesn't half help you out over what is then a very, very difficult and hectic run of games. And if Norwich, to be frank, can't at home beat Huddersfield and they can't beat them with a really good performance, then top 6 can be forgotten, really, to be frank about it. So they've got to go and prove that they are capable of performing and producing, not just one where they win 1-0 and they huff and they puff and they don't have many shots on target and it's a real struggle. It needs to be a win that's backed up by a performance for me, because that is where the confidence will come. Results build confidence, but performances build success. And if you can get the 2 of them, then you're on to a winner. So fewer moments, more collective performance. That for me is the aim heading into this festive period. But I think Norwich City will come through it, and I'm going to go with a very, very tight 2-1 win.
Yeah, I think I was speaking to someone yesterday. I think I'm going to go 3-1 for Norwich. I kind of feel like it's important to get the early goal, because you can kind of feel that you know the approach that Huddersfield are going to take coming down here. They're going to sit men behind the ball, and if Norwich struggle to break that through, you can kind of feel that frustration almost building a little bit in the Carrow Road crowd, and maybe the players I think when they get one, they'll get two, and then they'll maybe get three. But it's kind of that crucial element of getting the early goal, almost what they got against Sheffield Wednesday. I know that was a slightly different game, and that they then actually kind of conceded and maybe had to kick on again from there. But that can be the way I see it going. And with that, I think that's probably it for today. We're going to round off. Lots of great content across the Pink 'Un channels, of course. We'll all be at Carrow Road tomorrow afternoon, so there'll be live team news, reaction, everything you need to know from that one. Of course, we've got David Wagner's press conference up on our YouTube channel at the moment, so you can go and hear what he has to say ahead of this one. I spoke to a Huddersfield fan on Terrace Talk, and they're feeling a little bit pessimistic, I think, at the moment. They're struggling to kind of see the form that kind of they need to maybe pull away from the bottom, sort of pack of teams in the relegation battle. So you can hear their thoughts over there. Of course, the Pink 'Un Plus app, we've got an offer at the moment, which you can take up, which is £3 for 3 months or £24 for an annual subscription. That's well worth checking out if you aren't already a Pink 'Un Plus subscriber. Live blogs, live Q&As, lots of subscriber exclusive content, like Chris Sutton, Ewan Roberts, Chris Gorham, lots of great people there with great insight. So that's well worth checking out. And I think that's probably it. We're going to sign off. Have a great Christmas, everyone. Hopefully Norwich can get 3 points to get us all in the festive mood. Conor, what's your Christmas plans?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not to play no one play a violin for me. I'm fine, but I think it's really only Christmas Day that I kind of end up off because of the amount of games and various different things. So just be at home, just eating lots of food and being generally merry. That's the plan. What about you, Adam?
Yeah, I'm probably going to be in a similar boat. I think food is always the way, particularly when we then got the trip to West Brom. Hopefully, be fueled on a turkey dinner on the previous day, so that will, of course, hopefully boost the mood going to the Hawthorns. To be fair, quite enjoy going to the Hawthorns, so that's not the worst trip to have off on Boxing Day. So. But hopefully, of course, if Norwich have got 3 points from this Huddersfield game, we're all going to be feeling even better and even more festive spirit. So that will sign off. Enjoy the rest of your Friday. Enjoy your weekend. And, of course, enjoy your Christmas. We'll see you tomorrow. And that'll be us signing off.